The forest, the tall pines, the soft rustle of leaves, and the distant calls of birds offered a sense of peace she rarely found elsewhere. On this particular morning, she had set out alone, hoping to lose herself in the calm embrace of nature. But as the sun climbed higher, filtering gentle rays through the dense canopy, a sudden misstep on uneven ground sent her tumbling. Her ankle twisted sharply beneath her weight, and a sharp pain shot through her leg. Saskania groaned softly, realizing immediately that she could not stand. The forest, which had moments ago felt comforting, now seemed vast and unyielding. Panic crept in, mingling with a deep, hollow loneliness. She had hiked these trails countless times, but never like this alone. Injured, and uncertain if anyone would come looking for her, she tried to shift her position, to get comfortable on the soft forest floor, but every movement reminded her of the injury. The sunlight through the trees danced on the mossy ground, and the distant chirping of birds continued, oblivious to her struggle. The forest seemed to hold its breath, calm and patient, almost as if it was waiting to see what she would do next. Saskania's heart pounded, but amid the fear, there was also a strange sense of stillness. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the earthy scent of pine and damp soil, trying to steady herself. She was alone, but the forest was not hostile. Somehow, deep in her chest, a quiet voice whispered that perhaps she wasn't as helpless as she felt. Hours could pass in the forest feeling both endless and silent, and Saskania knew that help was not coming soon. She would have to find a way to endure until something, or someone, arrived. Oath will shock you, Saskania tried to calm herself, shifting slightly to rest her ankle on a patch of moss. The pain throbbed steadily, a reminder that she was truly stranded. She glanced around the forest floor, hoping for something familiar, something that might give her a sense of direction. That's when she noticed them large, deep footprints pressed into the soft earth. At first, she thought they might belong to a deer, or perhaps a bear, but something about their size and shape was different. The prints were enormous, much larger than any animal she had ever seen. Her heart skipped a beat, fear mixed with curiosity as she stared at the tracks, following their trail a few steps before realizing they led deeper into the forest. Past the trees and mossy undergrowth, a soft rustle nearby made her freeze. Leaves shifted gently, a low, almost deliberate sound. Saskania's eyes darted toward it, searching for the source, but all she could see were the shadows cast by swaying branches. Her mind raced. Could it be a bear? Or something else entirely? She remembered every nature documentary she had ever watched, every story about wild animals, but nothing prepared her for the feeling that something intelligent was watching, quietly assessing her. Her breathing grew shallow as the rustling continued intermittently, always just beyond the edge of her sight. She realized she could not move without aggravating her ankle, yet she felt compelled to stay alert. Despite her fear, there was no aggression in the sounds, only a careful, measured presence. Saskania's pulse slowed slightly as she tried to think rationally. The forest was alive, but this presence was unlike any ordinary animal she had ever encountered. It lingered nearby, patient, watching. She felt a strange mixture of awe and caution. Part of her wanted to call out, to make herself known, but another part held her back, sensing that this presence was not here to harm her. The sun had begun to dip lower, casting long shadows across the ground, and Saskania realized she would soon need shelter for the night. Yet, a strange comfort settled over her. For all the fear she felt, the forest seemed strangely attentive, almost protective. She did not know what was out there, but she had the growing sense that it was not a threat. Saskania stayed perfectly still, her ankle throbbing with every heartbeat. The rustling in the undergrowth grew slightly louder, closer, but still cautious, deliberate. She held her breath, unsure whether to be terrified or merely watch. Then, through a gap in the trees, she saw it. A towering figure emerged, moving with surprising grace. Its fur was deep brown, thick and matted in places, and its eyes, large, dark, and remarkably expressive, seemed to study her with curiosity rather than menace. Saskania's heart raced, yet she found herself unable to look away. There was an intelligence in those eyes, a calm, almost gentle presence that seemed to measure her. To understand her vulnerability, she wanted to call out, to ask if it was real, but her voice caught in her throat. Instead, she remained frozen, watching as the creature stepped lightly over fallen branches, maintaining a distance, but never taking its gaze off her. It was, unlike anything she had ever seen, massive, yet deliberate in every movement, careful not to make a sudden gesture that might alarm her. Time seemed to stretch. Saskania noticed the way it paused, tilting its head, observing her with what felt like quiet deliberation. She realized she wasn't being threatened. There was no aggression in its stance, no signs of hostility. Instead, there was something almost tender in the way it lingered, curious yet respectful. Then, almost as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature retreated a few steps into the shadows, still watching her. Saskania's body relaxed slightly. Though adrenaline still hummed through her veins, she blinked, trying to process what she had just witnessed. For a long moment, there was only the sound of leaves rustling and distant birdsong. The forest seemed to hold its breath with her. Saskania felt a strange combination of awe, relief, and disbelief. She had expected danger, perhaps even panic. But instead, she had found something profoundly unexpected, an awareness, a quiet recognition of her plight. She sank back against a tree, her heart slowing, as a strange warmth of reassurance spread through her. Whatever this creature was, it had no intention of harming her. Somewhere deep in her chest, a quiet, almost reverent thought formed. Perhaps she was not as alone in this forest as she had feared. As the afternoon faded, the forest began to shift. Shadows stretched longer, and the sunlight softened into warm, golden beams that filtered through the towering pines. Saskania's ankle throbbed with every slight movement, and a creeping unease settled in. Night would come soon, and with it, the chill and darkness of the forest. She tried to lift herself slightly, testing the strength in her leg, but the pain reminded her she was immobile. Panic whispered at the edges of her mind. She was alone, hurt, and far from any trail. The thought of spending the night on the forest floor, exposed and helpless, made her shiver. Then, a rustling came from deeper within the trees. Saskania froze, her breath catching. Through the dim light, she saw movement, not one figure, but several. A family of the towering creatures she had glimpsed earlier appeared, stepping quietly between the shadows. Her heart thumped, but oddly, it was not entirely with fear. One of them, an adult, paused at a short distance, watching her with those same curious, intelligent eyes. Beside it, a smaller one lingered, as if hesitating to approach. Then, without a word, the adult carefully set something on the ground near her, a small pile of berries and a container of water. The gesture was deliberate, calm, and thoughtful. Saskania stared in disbelief. Relief washed over her, replacing the tight coil of panic. They were not threatening her. They were helping. Slowly, the tension in her body eased. For the first time since she had fallen, she felt a small measure of comfort. As the forest darkened further, the creatures did not leave, but remained nearby, maintaining a watchful distance. The sounds of the night, rustling leaves, the whisper of wind, distant bird calls felt less ominous with them there. The forest, which had seemed vast and unforgiving just hours ago, now held a quiet reassurance. Saskania rested back against the tree, letting the gentle presence of the Bigfoot family settle around her. Fear was still there, but it was tempered by a growing sense of trust. For the first time in that long, uncertain day, she allowed herself to breathe deeply and to hope. Morning arrived slowly, painting the forest in soft shades of gold and green. Saskania stirred, her ankle still sore, but her spirits lifted slightly. She was not alone. The Bigfoot family she had glimpsed the previous evening remained nearby, their large forms partially hidden among the trees. There was no rush, no sudden movements, just a calm, watchful presence that seemed to say, "We are here, and you are safe." One of the smaller Bigfoots stepped forward first, carrying a bundle of moss and leaves. It laid them gently near her, forming a makeshift cushion. Saskania blinked, realizing with a mix of astonishment and gratitude that they had created a soft place for her to rest. Another adult emerged with a shallow stream of water in its hands, letting her drink without any expectation, simply ensuring she had what she needed. She watched as they moved with care, observing her closely without invading her space. One adult nudged her ankle lightly with a large, fur-covered hand, as if checking that it was not too painful. The smallest member of the group mimicked gestures she made, tilting its head when she tilted hers, moving when she shifted slightly, showing an intelligence that felt almost human. Saskania's fear had diminished completely, replaced by a quiet awe. She had never imagined that creatures so massive could possess such gentleness. Each small gesture, the way they adjusted a blanket, how they positioned themselves to keep watch over her, the careful placement of food and water spoke of awareness and empathy. She tried to communicate, pointing to her ankle, gesturing toward the water, hoping they would understand. They did. The adult Bigfoot nodded slowly, its eyes holding a kind of patient understanding. Saskania felt her chest swell with gratitude. For the first time since the fall, she truly felt cared for. Hours passed quietly. The forest around them remained alive with birdsong and the rustle of leaves, but inside her little clearing, a sense of safety and calm prevailed. Saskania realized that she could rest, that she could rely on these creatures to watch over her, to share a quiet kindness without words. As she leaned back, letting the soft moss cushion her, she thought of how strange and beautiful this was, how the wild, often feared, could offer such unexpected compassion. It was a lesson in patience, trust, and gentle understanding, delivered not through speech but through action. And for Saskania, it was profoundly soothing, a reminder that care could come from the most unlikely of places. By mid-morning, Saskania had grown more comfortable with the quiet presence of the Bigfoot family. She had observed them closely and realized how intentional every movement was, the way they approached, the way they carried themselves, even the careful distance they kept to avoid startling her. Slowly, a sense of trust began to take root. She tried a small gesture, raising her hand slightly and pointing toward the water nearby. The adult Bigfoot paused, then nodded almost imperceptibly, acknowledging her request. It moved deliberately, guiding the container closer so she could drink without straining her ankle. Saskania's heart swelled with quiet gratitude. She wanted to speak, to tell them how thankful she was, but words felt inadequate. Instead, she smiled softly, a gesture that the smaller Bigfoot seemed to notice. It tilted its head, watching her carefully, and then mirrored the slight smile in its own way. Encouraged by their responsiveness, Saskania reached toward her ankle again, pointing at it and then gently tapping it. The adult Bigfoot stepped closer, placing a massive, careful hand on her leg. Not pressing, just resting lightly, as if offering reassurance. The warmth of that touch was unlike anything she had experienced. It carried a silent understanding, a recognition of her vulnerability and her courage. Small moments accumulated, each one deepening the bond. The little Bigfoot brought leaves to adjust her blanket, arranging them to make her more comfortable. Another nudged a fallen branch closer to prop her ankle. A simple act that felt profoundly thoughtful. Saskania felt tears prick her eyes, not of fear, but of astonishment and quiet joy. For the first time since the fall, she felt an almost human connection with these creatures. It was wordless, yet full of meaning. She whispered a soft, "Thank you," even though she knew they could not understand the words, and they stayed close, patient, and attentive. As the sun climbed higher, warming the forest floor, Saskania realized she had been given something rare: trust and care from beings who lived entirely apart from human society, yet who understood compassion instinctively. The fear that had gripped her so tightly had been replaced by awe and comfort. And in that quiet forest clearing, surrounded by creatures so massive yet so gentle, Saskania felt an emotional connection that would stay with her long after she left. As dusk settled over the forest, the shadows deepened, and the temperature dropped slightly. Saskania felt the ache in her ankle more keenly, and the thought of a long night alone brought a shiver down her spine. But the Bigfoot family remained close, their quiet presence a steady comfort. They moved around her with deliberate care, never crowding, never startling, but always attentive. One of the adults positioned itself slightly downwind, its large form creating a subtle barrier between her and the unknown darkness beyond. Another sat quietly, observing the surroundings, while the smaller members of the family lingered nearby, their curious eyes following her every movement. Saskania felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a mixture of relief and awe. She was not alone. She arranged the soft leaves and moss around her, guided by the small nudges and gentle gestures of the little Bigfoot. It was as if they understood her need for comfort. The adult occasionally glanced at her, tilting its head in silent reassurance. Saskania closed her eyes for a moment, letting the quiet of the forest and the gentle watchfulness of her unexpected caretakers soothe her frayed nerves. As night deepened, the usual sounds of the forest, the chirping of insects, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl took on a softer, more peaceful tone. Saskania's initial fear of darkness faded into calm observation. She realized that these creatures were not only protecting her physically but also offering a sense of emotional safety. She allowed herself to lean back fully against the mossy ground, her eyes tracing the outline of the trees above, and felt a rare sense of peace. Every so often, a hand or a nudge would remind her that she was watched over, cared for, and not in danger. Hours passed quietly, the forest alive but gentle, and Saskania drifted in and out of sleep. Her dreams were filled not with fear or despair, but with the quiet, steady presence of the family that had chosen to remain near her. When she awoke briefly, the Bigfoots were still there, still protective, still attentive, their calm presence offering reassurance that she could survive the night. For the first time since her fall, Saskania felt fully safe. The forest, once overwhelming and isolating, had transformed into a sanctuary, thanks to the gentle care of creatures she had never believed could show such understanding. By the time the first hints of dawn crept through the trees, Saskania felt a quiet clarity settling over her. The night had passed with the Bigfoot family close by, and she had survived without harm. The ache in her ankle remained, but the fear that had gripped her so tightly for hours had melted away. She realized, with a profound sense of relief, that she was going to make it. The family moved with calm purpose around her clearing. One of the adults nudged her gently, checking her leg once again, then stepped back, eyes watchful. The smaller members carried moss and branches, adjusting the space to make her more comfortable. Saskania could see the intelligence and awareness in every movement. They were not just protecting her, but actively helping her in ways she had never imagined. A deep sense of gratitude filled her chest. She whispered softly, "Thank you," though she knew the words were beyond their understanding. Yet the gesture of speaking, of acknowledging their care, brought her peace. They seemed to sense it, responding with subtle nods or careful gestures, maintaining that unspoken bond that had grown over the past 2 days. Saskania thought about her situation, the distance from the trail, the pain in her ankle, the uncertainty of being found by humans, and recognized how unlikely her survival would have been without these creatures. They had created shelter, ensured she had water and food, and kept watch through the night. Their actions were deliberate, intelligent, and entirely selfless. For the first time since the fall, she allowed herself to breathe fully, to let go of panic and fear. She felt the weight of gratitude, awe, and humility. These creatures, living in a world entirely apart from humans, had chosen to help her, to care for her when no one else could. The forest itself seemed to echo this realization. Birds called softly from the trees, the wind rustled gently through the branches, and the morning light spilled warmth over her. Saskania understood that her survival was not just a matter of luck. It had been guided by the presence, patience, and care of the Bigfoot family. In that moment, she felt a profound bond, wordless but unbreakable. She had been rescued, not by humans, but by beings who had shown her a kind of understanding and compassion that defied explanation. And with that knowledge, a quiet peace settled over her, stronger than any fear she had felt before. The first rays of sunlight filtered softly through the trees, painting the forest in warm hues of gold and green. Saskania stirred on the mossy ground, her ankle still sore, but her heart lighter than it had been in days. The forest was awakening, birds called from the treetops, and the gentle wind rustled the leaves, but her attention was drawn to the Bigfoot family, who had remained quietly nearby throughout the night. One by one, they began to move, as if sensing the arrival of a new day. They did not rush or make sudden movements. The adults stepped back first, glancing briefly at Saskania with those same thoughtful, expressive eyes. Then the smaller ones followed. They moved silently between the trees, their massive forms fading into the forest's shadows, careful to leave her undisturbed and safe. Saskania watched them go, a mixture of awe and gratitude swelling within her. She realized how extraordinary the past 2 days had been. These creatures, immense, wild, and utterly unknown, had chosen to care for her, without demand or expectation, simply offering protection and comfort when she was most vulnerable. Their actions had been deliberate, intelligent, and entirely selfless. She thought of the way the little Bigfoot had adjusted the moss and leaves, how the adult had checked her ankle, how each movement had conveyed understanding and empathy. It was a quiet, wordless bond, built in gestures rather than speech, yet it felt profoundly personal. Saskania felt tears prick at her eyes, not from fear or pain, but from gratitude for the care she had received. As the sunlight grew stronger and the forest seemed to come fully alive, Saskania allowed herself a deep, steady breath. She knew she would carry this memory with her forever: the gentle presence of the family, their quiet protection, and the unexpected kindness of beings who existed entirely outside her world. For a long moment, she simply watched, feeling a profound connection to the forest and its silent guardians. When she finally rose to carefully test her ankle and continue toward help, she did so with a heart full of quiet wonder, gratitude, and a lasting sense of peace. Weeks later, back in her quiet home, Saskania found herself thinking of the forest. The memory of the Bigfoot family lingered not as something frightening or unreal, but as a profound reminder of kindness and care in the most unexpected form. She rarely spoke of it. Few would believe her, and the truth of the experience felt too delicate, too sacred, to share casually. She remembered every small gesture: the gentle touch on her ankle, the careful adjustments of leaves and moss, the way the smallest member of the family mimicked her movements, and the way the adults had watched over her silently through the night. Each act had been simple, wordless, and deliberate, yet together they had created a sanctuary in the heart of the wilderness. Saskania often closed her eyes and pictured the clearing where she had rested, the dappled sunlight falling through the trees, and the quiet, massive forms of her unlikely caretakers. She could almost feel the reassurance in their presence again, the silent promise that she had been safe. Even now, the memory brought a calm warmth to her chest. It was a lesson that stayed with her. Compassion, empathy, and care could be found in places and beings far beyond what she had ever imagined. She realized that the forest and the creatures within it had offered her more than protection. They had shown her a kind of understanding that was rare in the human world. Saskania's heart carried that quiet bond. It was a memory that did not fade, a story written in gestures and attention rather than words, yet one that shaped the way she looked at the world. The wild could be frightening, yes, but it could also be gentle, patient, and nurturing, if one approached it with respect and openness. And sometimes, when she felt alone or weary, she would close her eyes and remember the 2 days in the forest, and a gentle calm would wash over her. The memory of the Bigfoot family remained a reminder that kindness and care could exist in the most unexpected places, and that even in the vast, silent wilderness, one could find connection, protection, and love.